All right. Let's start in the name of the Most High. Greetings. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to my amazing, amazing lady friends who are joining me here tonight. How are you ladies feeling?
Feeling
Alhamdulillah.
good.
Doing well.
You guys look well. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the Dope Muslim Woman podcast. We have just now went live, so it takes a few minutes for it to roll over. But I am so thankful to be back on. We just did an amazing pre-show with Dr. Raymond Brock, and he broke down the basics of narcissism. But now we are having a real deal couch talk. Called Hidden in Plain Sight: The Secret Life of the Religious Narcissist with our ladies. And tonight we are getting the Muslim and the Christian experience here on the show. And this is the first time ever that the Dope Muslim Woman podcast has sat down and really had this conversation with our Christian sisters. And it's so overdue, right, Janice? We've been
Yeah.
talking about this like for a year, right?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Greetings, Alaikum. Hi, everybody. Thank you. As soon as you come on, I'm going to make it your task to share it. If you can be so kind, I would be appreciative. Just share the podcast. It goes a long way. People often ask, like, how can I give back? I learned so much from the Dope Muslim Woman podcast, but simply sharing, being positive and sharing it goes a long way. So definitely appreciate it. Alaikum salam, everybody. All right, you guys, we're going to get right into it. Let me introduce my ladies here today. I'm going to start with our sister Janice. And Janice, she's been on here before. She was on for my birthday show. And Janice is very special to me because Janice has a very pure spirit. And a lot of times the soul will inform you. Our souls will inform you of other good souls, just like it will inform you of not so good souls. And I've always had this sort of pure feeling every time I've had an engagement with Janice. She's consistently supportive. She's consistently there for the Dope Muslim Women podcast. And to be honest with you, she is from a different faith. She's Christian, and she shows and models that we're all in this together. We all have the same struggles. We all have sort of concerns, and we all kind of come to the table. So, welcome, Janice. How do you feel about being on the Dope Muslim Woman officially?
I feel honored, and thank you again for inviting me on your platform.
Thank you for being here. And Janice does have her own platform. She does the same sort of spirited talks, more from a Christian lens. And she has a whole collective group of women that she leads. And we're just thankful to have her here. So, babies are those. I'm just joking. Look at the friend. She's like, hey, mine, guilty. It's okay, sis. We all got kids, okay? So, welcome. We wonder why. Let's just go right to it, Coach Sabria. This is my dear sister, Coach Sabria, who's joining us back. The last time she was here, and people were like, you got to get Sabria back on the show. When she coming back? I'm like, she's going to come back. Trust me. So we are so thankful to have Coach Sabria rejoin us here today. She's an author of The Crooked Rib Golden Soul. She's the owner of Bree Speaks. She's a motivational speaker. She does all types of work. She's a coach. She does all types of amazing things for the community. And I just love our collaboration. And, sometimes we bounce ideas off of each other. And she's just a phenomenal woman to have by your side and on your team. Thank you so much, Sabria, for coming back.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be back. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you to your whoever's trying to be in the show. So you can tell them.
Yes, I'm sorry.
And this sister here, I've wanted her on the podcast for so long. She's an amazing light. She's been very supportive of the Dope Muslim Woman podcast. And she also runs a very similar platform, really encouraging love and light. And I've seen her definitely podcasting with my homie, Brother Nasheed, on his podcast. And, he's Brother Nasheed, we go way back. And so she just has a very strong, good, positive perspective. We're just so humbled and happy to finally have Sister Noble here on the show. Assalamu alaikum, sister.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. The pleasure is mine, definitely. Thank you for inviting me.
Alhamdulillah, thank you for being here. All right, ladies, we gotta get right into it. Okay. So the subject of this podcast, and I have to honor one of my dear sisters. It's called Hidden in Plain Sight. This is not my term. This was I asked if I could use the term from a sister who wrote an amazing column in the Muslim Journal, and it's called Hidden in Plain Sight. And it talked about like the abandonment of women and children and community. It talked a little bit about narcissism. And so it's an amazing column. Unfortunately, Sister Kalima could not join us here today, but we want to send honor and thanks and homage to her because she does phenomenal work in her own right. And she's just an incredible, brilliant human being. So we want to pay homage to Sister Kalima. But thank you, ladies, for joining us here tonight. All right, ladies, let's get into it. So we talked a little bit about narcissism. Dr. Raymond defined it for us. Hidden in plain sight. When I hear this term, I'm thinking about individuals, right, who are unhealthy, but seemingly healthy, right there in community, navigating in all our religious spaces, right? And just hidden in plain sight. We can see them, we can access them, they can access us, but their true reality is hidden, right? People can't really see their true reality unless you're the unfortunate soul that gets into a cyclical relationship with them. So that's really what I think about when I think of this title. I did want to just ask, I wanted to start with you, Coach Sabri, if that's okay. What is your thoughts about narcissism? What do you believe it to be? And relevant to sort of what we say, and let's just say narcissistic traits. We're going to be specific that we're talking about the traits and not the diagnosed disorder, because that's just we're not clinically there to discuss that. So, Sabria, what are your thoughts, or what do you believe to be or understand about just people navigating like narcissistic personality traits in community?
Sure. So, I've done a lot of research on this, trying to understand it myself, and navigating through my own personal experiences. And I've come to the conclusion that narcissistic traits really align with an inner child who's never healed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like something happened in that childhood for that person, and it was never addressed. And it's almost as if the child is there, even though the person has physically grown, you know, numerically, they're, you know, an adult, but they're really that little broken child. And so a lot of the traits that children have, they have, you know, as far as being self-centered and wanting attention and demanding, singling you out from everybody else. That's what children do. Temper tantrums, you know, guilt, you know, all these types of things are associated with, you know, when you're raising children, you kind of navigating as a parent through those emotions and to healthily, you know, get them through it. But if it wasn't taught to that person, and they don't know how to, then they think it's acceptable. And I feel like it's more acceptable in our society for men because those traits can come off as dominant. You know, a dominant male is an alpha male. We hear that. And initially, a woman may be attracted to that, you know, because he wants all of your attention. And, you know, he's singling you out and, you know, I love you and all these type of things. And then it slowly spirals, you know, it's a slow spiral down. So I feel like I associate narcissistic traits with just a broken inner child.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And popping over to you, Janice, you know, I mean, we all have different lenses on this, although we know the traits are similar no matter what people subscribe to, their lifestyle. What have you came across in a lot of your religious work and the work that you do in community as it relates to red flags? What are some of the common red flags that comes up with the women that you work with as it relates to individuals with narcissistic traits? What are some of those things that you got to watch out for?
Pretty much trying to manipulate you to believe what they're believing, and even though they know wholeheartedly that what they believe is not true, but they want to manipulate you to believe that it is true and force you to believe and give you tactics, like literally try to rip you apart, tear you down, to give you tactics to get you to believe that what I'm saying to you is commonly true. So I've dealt with that a lot.
Absolutely. So you're talking about far as like gaslighting. So really trying to
Yeah.
alter a person's reality in a sense to align with what they're inclined to, even though it's a false reality.
It's a false reality, yes.
Illusion that they created. Absolutely. And does this come up a lot in some of your Bible studies and just amongst the Christian sisters and
I would
brothers?
say more so in the church setting than Bible study or things of that nature. More so, it's done in leadership, pastorals. They try to, because they are in leadership, they try to, if your vision or what you're doing is not aligning with their purpose or whatever they think in their mind is set to be true, or their mission, what God has done from them is telling them to do, it's not. They're trying to like put you in a category where it's not true. No, this is not true. This is not right. And they will use tactics, from our belief. They will use tactics and things to make us believe that we're wrong, even though God can blatantly speak to me and within my heart, within my soul, give me a nudge, speak to my mental and tell me this is what I need you to be doing. They will try to detour you from that by using spiritual beliefs, and they will try to tear you down. They would even go as far as, going to the Bible and pulling scriptures, quoting scriptures, getting you to read certain stories and manipulate you with those type of things.
Powerful. Noble, any of that sound familiar with you? What we dealing with in the Muslim community?
I think that's all too familiar.
Yeah.
It's definitely all too familiar in the Muslim community. I think religion is a powerful tool that can be utilized by a narcissist to control their environment, especially when they're with somebody who really believes in their faith and has that faith and wants to do well in their faith. Just having those rules kind of at their disposal to pull out when they need to control a situation, knowing that that person already agrees with the fundamental beliefs of their faith and wants to be good internally. They're going to jump on that. Oh, yes, you're right. Let me be more kind, or let me be more understanding. And so the narcissist utilizes that toolbox to kind of come out cutting, I guess you can say, and never really taking responsibility on their end if the tables were to be turned.
That's correct.
Yeah, absolutely. SubhanAllah, SubhanAllah. So when we think about this idea like hidden in plain sight, right? So there is obviously an illusion created, Coach Sabria, right? There's an illusion created of being super religious or super pious, super sweet, even amongst women, because we know that we have female narcissists, right? We all okay. The brothers think we don't acknowledge it enough, but super sweet or super endearing or all of these sort of things. But there's a viciousness within. Are there sort of telltale signs in the beginning, Sabria, that this person is navigating something really, really dark? What are some of those telltale signs that a person can maybe attempt to sort of pick up, cues they can pick up in the beginning?
Yes, absolutely. I would say some of the top signs would be not wanting you to, or questioning, who you're with all the time. Not really wanting you to like, oh, you're going out again? I was hoping you would be home so I could call you, or I thought we were going out, and that in the way it's presented, it could look like, oh, he really wants to be with me, but really he's, isolating you from your family, or you're with your family and he finds something wrong with everybody, and I'm saying he, but I'm going to just say the person because I don't want to, associate to one sex, but, there's always something wrong with the people in your circle. Another thing that is common is to, my mind just went blank.
Okay.
Come back to me.
No problem. Okay, Janice, I'm gonna come back to Sabria, but when you talk about these sort of early signs, especially for the religious narcissist, let's just focus on the religious narcissist, okay?
Mhm.
They got the scriptures down, sis. You know what I mean? Bible in the hand, you know, they own the church on Sunday, right?
Yeah.
And so what are some of the, okay, so beneath and beyond some of that, what are some of the little characteristics or traits, little red flags that are pretty common amongst those who may be using that religion as a cover for their darkness?
Um, Trying to control who you connect with outside the religion itself.
Yeah.
So I would definitely say the
When you say
connection.
outside the religion itself, what you mean? So you're
Yes.
saying like connecting with other people outside the faith?
Well, connecting with other people, I would say in the faith base, like, oh, like, okay, I'm gonna give you an example. Like I was attending a community where we had to get permission to um, join another church, like go to another church, interact with
Right.
another church. I feel like that is one of like a red flag for control. Because I kind of feel like, we should be able to mingle amongst people, to kind of figure out different styles, not just being judgmental.
Yeah.
We can learn. They can learn from us. We can learn from them. Just anywhere outside the perimeter of the church, going, whether it's visiting, another place, another community, that was
Mm,
not allowed. It was kind of like, you have to come by me first. You have to run it from me. So I feel like that was a lot of red flags that was going on. There's a lot that goes on in the Christian faith when it pertains to visiting, other congregations.
And what about like interfaith? Would that be a red flag if that
No,
if
it was interfaith. It was interfaith.
oh, okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
it was
Gotcha.
it was
Yeah.
interface. It was more like, oh, I want to make sure you're covered before you go over there. We don't know how they operate over there. It was kind of like those tactics, if that makes
hmm
sense.
So what about when you're dealing in an intimate relationship with the individual who is like the ultra religious person or seemingly appearing so? What Dr. Brock Raymond said, which I thought was incredibly brilliant, they said even if there is this sort of outward appearance of it, like narcissistic traits is a character problem. So at the end of the day, these individuals usually, navigate some major character flaws, or just on a moral level, there's some challenges there, right? And so that's usually a good indicator, right? You can see the type of people hang out with, where the places that they go, maybe some of the things that they engage in, which indicates major character challenges. So what do you typically see? What are some of the signs in a person who's trying to get you in an intimate relationship, who's appearing to be really dedicated to the faith, when they're attempting to cover the truth of themselves?
For me, just from my standpoint, I would
Mm-hmm.
say I'm really able to tell just by their spirit. I could
Like
I could
intuitively.
I can't really explain it outside of that. It's kind of like just a knowing. You don't
Yeah.
know how you know. It's just like, it's just something that, it's like an uneased feeling, like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, it's a red flag pops up and it's like, all right, I may not be able to decipher everything at this moment, but I know something is off. And then,
Right.
gradually, as I, begin to know that person, they'll begin to reveal themselves more and more to me, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense.
It does. It does. Noble, one of the things that is really common, okay, for these individuals is obviously the stage of love bombing. And what love bombing involves is I'm gonna have you on the phone all the time, I'm in your ear all the time, I'm giving you gifts, you don't have time to look at the red flags. You don't have time to take a pause and be like, hold on, what's going on? Because there's so much that they're offering. And then, sometimes in our religious, in Islam, we get married fast, child. You know what I mean? We don't. So before we
Very
could even
true.
the mask drop, we already in a whole marriage situationship, right? So, what are some of the things, right, that where you see we go wrong with this? And I know the first thing you may say, we need to wait longer, but even outside of just waiting longer, where do we go wrong with sort of this idea of just kind of like falling into believing like, oh, this person is really, really the one, and giving it no time? And like, where do we go wrong here? What's wrong with our process?
I honestly think we forget to close our eyes and pay attention. I think sometimes we fall in love with the idea of who we want this person to be, and they come so strong with, like you said, the love bombing or the religious aspect side of themselves, where you just fall in love with that, and you feel like they're a wonderful guide, and they're paying me all this attention, and we want that. Those are great qualities to have in a relationship for the long term, for longevity. But I think that we forget to take a step back and see if it's overkill. We have to pay attention very carefully to the overkill factor. Like, is it love bombing, or are they just paying me, the appropriate amount of attention that I should receive at the beginning of a courting phase? Love bombing really puts you in a position to not see anything negative. And that right there is a red flag for me. I need to see you at your raw, organic self. I need you to show me some vulnerability. And if you're always love bombing me, or if you're always approaching me with this level of leadership, and that's another thing, if you're always coming at me with leadership and trying to, I guess, flaunt your knowledge, but you're never taking the time to come down and say, okay, let's discuss this, or take my side, empathize and empathize with how I may feel, how am I taking this from you? You really have to pay attention to those small things. And at first it's hard because, like I said, you really want to believe that person is your knight in shining armor. Or on the female side, you want to believe that she is the guy, the wonderful mother, the hopeful, the wife that is, and spouse that is going to be there, kind and always, concerned about you and taking care of you in the home. But at her core, she could really be codependent. She could be a vulnerable narcissist, as it was kind of stated earlier, where, she needs you to feed into her ego in order for her to even stay healthy. So, and it's just, you have to pay attention to the person and give that person the specific, I guess you can say, time to show you who they are, and make sure they are showing you all of them.
Yeah. And you know what? Thank you so much. That was powerful. And just to combine what I heard from both of you guys, I think one of the things I always say, like, you got to really pay attention to is definitely that feeling of how you feel. And like, it's sort of like when they're love bombing you, or you're feeling this sort of intensity, it makes you feel overwhelmed. So early on, if you start to feel overwhelmed, like, this is before you have a full attachment, a full bond, you start to feel like, whoa, like maybe your work has taken a hit, family life has taken a hit, something like that's a key indicator. Red alert. A gradual relationship should never start off that way, right? Where you're just completely thrown off, you can't get your whole life together. So definitely agree with you there. Coach Sabria, I'm going to go a little bit with Samaya said. She said, even if someone does this, I think she's, referring to another comment, but they can still be manipulated. Narcissistic manipulation is subtle and hard to recognize until you're wrapped up into it. By the time you start questioning their blatant misuse of the holy book, you are already questioning yourself and not too sure about what you know. I want you to talk a little bit about, as Muslims, we want to please Allah. We want to be obedient to Allah. We want to serve Him, right? And if we feel, right, at any point that we are not doing that, that makes us feel guilt and shame. Can you talk a little bit about how guilt and shame is used by these harmful individuals in a religious sense, right? The certain hadiths used to elicit guilt and shame. How is it used, and how does it really affect the Muslim believer who really just wants to do the right thing?
Oh, that's in many ways, when you're courting, one of the ways that this guilt and the shame comes up is everything. Let's say you show maybe a negative character trait. Maybe you get angry, or you're not patient. You know, you guys have a disagreement, and then it starts. You know, well, if you were more patient, you know, that wouldn't happen. Or if you would pray more, you know, you wouldn't have been, you know, in this situation, this wouldn't come up. So now it's back on you. It's all your fault. You know, now we have to delay the wedding, or, you know, now I have to tell my mom, you don't want everybody to wear blue because, you know, whatever. And sister, you need to fear Allah. And so immediately in the beginning, they have this spiritual imprisonment, you know, over you, and they use the religion to oppress you. You know, they use the religion to make you feel like you're less than a believer, you know, or less than a Muslim. You don't have the traits, and you need them in order to get the traits that they say you don't have. So when it starts like that, early on, before you're even in a relationship, is really dangerous, because you start to believe that, you know, in your the pureness within you starts to believe, well, maybe I am, you know, not patient, or maybe that's why, you know, I've been single so long, or I got divorced, or whatever. And then when you get into the relationship, it goes even deeper. And one of the things that how they can use this is through knowing more about you. When you're courting a person with narcissistic traits, you find that they want to know all about you, but you don't really know a lot about them. You know, and the family will say, well, he said he's an accountant. What's your firm? You're like, wow, I don't know. You know, okay, but he said he was divorced. Where's the ex-wife? You know, what's her side of the story? Where's the kids? He has kids. And you're just like, I don't know. But they know everything about you. They know where you work. They pull up for lunch. You know, they know your mama, where she live at. They done met everybody. And they need that information, because that's what they use as their mechanism to shame you religiously, you know, because now they can pick up on all your little subtleties and all the little pots and, you know, all your holes, your brokenness. I find that it's very easy to, for people with narcissistic traits, to target people who are broken, who have already been hurt, you know, already have pain. They pick up on that. And when they find where the pain is, that's where they tone in at. You know, and then it's like, you know, they become what it is that you need, you know, only long enough for them to, all right, now I have you. Once they have you, it's over. They don't need to do that anymore. So that's where a lot of that religious shame and religious guilt comes in, and it carries. And this is why often when you and I talk about this, how you become trauma bonded. Because now it's hard to get out of it, you know, because you're stuck. They have gotten you to a point where you believe the lies that they told you about yourself. You know, now you're telling yourself lies about yourself. You know, get it together. You know, you need to do this. You need to read more Quran. You need to be better. You know, you see people, they change instantly. They were, you know, maybe look a certain way, dress, you know, they were, you know, have their signature chemo, and now all of a sudden they're fully covered. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but the reason behind it is because they feel like they need to do these things in order to be, you know, connected more spiritually to the creator or the person, you know, and they need to do these things. So
because I don't mean to cut you off, Sabria. We're still talking. I'm talking to you, but you said something powerful. And the thing is that you're absolutely right when it comes to this little element of spiritual abuse, where it's like, in a sense, you know, the reason why this is so harmful is because that individual who you're trauma bonded with, that narcissist who you're addicted to, becomes a little Eli that you created. You think a little false God, for those who needs that translation. You think you're worshiping God. They're using that, but essentially it's the object of your worship is that individual. And you begin to morph into what they want. It's not necessarily aligned at your core, truly, sincerely, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants, even if they're using religious texts to get you to do and fall in line, right? But it's really is you have created and made that person a false God, a false idol. Right. And I always say we need to constantly be in the practice of smashing the false idols. And that's what this work is about. Right. We're in the business of smashing anything that comes between our relationship with the Most High.
That's right.
So Absolutely. Sabri, I may cut you off, but I just, that's
Absolutely.
the whole point of this work, right? It's not
Yeah.
about going to go get narcissists because we're all bitter people that was in relationships with them. That's not it at all. It's literally a barrier between us and God. And
Yeah.
Janice, I want to pop over to you and talk a little bit about that. This idea of when you get into this relationship, sometimes your relationship with God takes a hit, right?
Yes.
Come on now.
Yes.
It's really dark. And so talk to me a little bit about what that looks like, when you're disconnected from your faith and from God because you're so obsessed and addictive and trying to fix this unhealthy bond you're in.
You begin to lose yourself, your identity, who God created you to be. You're lost. You're all over the place, emotionally, mentally, and you're questioning yourself. Everything that you do, you're trying to get yourself back in alignment with what the Most High wants you, where He wants you and desires you to be. But it's hard to get there because you have someone that is taking, the content of this is what God is saying and this is what you should be in alignment with. And you're trying to stay in alignment and fulfill your duties as a godly wife or a godly, you want to be submissive to to the Most High. You want to be submissive to your to your significant other, and keep that covenant going because you want to be blessed. But then you have this person that keeps twisting the tactics. Every time you step out to go this way, you're nudged to go this way. They're saying, no, you're supposed to be submissive. You're not being submissive. God is not pleased with that. You have to do this. You have to do that. And you're going back and it's not feeling safe for you anymore. It's not feeling right. It's not feeling like you can just breathe. It feels like an emotional bondage, like your mind is in bondage. Your heart becomes in captive. And again, you're fighting with, I'm trying to do what's right in my faith and I'm trying to please the Most High, but this, there's an imbalance somewhere.
Yeah.
Powerful. And Noble, Janice brought the word up, so we might as well talk about it. There's a lot of conversations. I know you podcast, Noble, a lot, but there's a lot of conversations, especially out there on podcasts and things like this, about submissiveness, right? So we talk a lot about it. Nothing wrong with it. We all know it's cool. But there's a lot of conversations about it. And it's so interesting how sometimes this is like the absolute most important thing ever to some people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about this submits because we submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And we submit to what Allah tells us, what else Allah tells us to submit to, no questions asked, right? To what God tells us to, right? But how is this this conversation we're having about submissiveness, right? How is this sometimes being turned into something totally dark, nasty, ugly, and controlling?
So submission, that's a very great topic for me because I believe that there's a such thing as powerful submission. It's a submission that we possess in our femininity to still maintain a certain, I guess you can say, powerfulness, even though we are giving into submissive situations, and also allowing our husbands to feel like leaders and that we support them. But I believe that there's a fine line between submission and oppression at times, where sometimes we'll oppress ourselves if we're in a situation to where the leaders are taking advantage of us. And then I also want to turn the tables here just a little bit and say to the husbands out there who have wives that are manipulating them into expectations and to being like victims, constant victims all the time, where they need their husbands to constantly do. They can utilize submission also as a form of manipulation. So we have to be careful. We have to be careful when we criticize submission, but we also have to be understand that it's a powerful thing that we can utilize as in our femininity. It's not something that oppresses us.
It could be used as a tactic, right?
It can be used as oh yes, submission can be used as a tactic and a narcissist tool, especially in our femininity. We have that power as well. So I think sometimes we forget how powerful we are in our submission at times when men do love us and they will go to the ends of the earth for us. And then we overuse them, and then we become oppressive to them because they are really striving to be that great husband, that great provider. And some women can become narcissistic in their own victim mentality of always pulling from their husband and draining them. So, submission is definitely there, and it's needed both ways, us to Allah, of course, as women, us to our husbands in certain situations. But the powerfulness that it holds when it's used the right way is really what forms the bond between a healthy husband and wife, because the husband has to submit to Allah as well.
Yeah. Ooh, you didn't open up little cannonball.
Yeah.
Right? Come on now, Noble, trying to get me in trouble. But no, mashallah, it was very powerful, and you're absolutely right. And we don't talk enough about the female narcissist. And to be honest with you, narcissistic traits, just like Dr. Ray said, we all have to be in the battle of fighting that within ourselves, right? No one's exempt. We'd be like, oh, I'm not a narcissist. I'm not a narcissist. Okay, you may not have the full-fledged disorder, but you may be struggling with traits. And we all have to go in and do these sort of introspective self-checks. But we don't talk enough about how femininity is used as a tool to dominate and control in a relationship with a man, because that we don't talk about that enough. We like to talk about the aggressive male narcissists because they are overt and they are nasty, right? We give the sweet little innocent feminine woman a pass, right? But the mean nasty narcissist, we don't. So Bri, I'm gonna pop over to you. I want to talk a little bit about, especially under the context of religion, there are a couple cycles, as we know, in the trauma bond and in the narcissistic abusive cycle. And one of these is the part of like devaluing and then to discard. And the issue of cheating comes up a lot. Okay. This is often which gets a lot of people to kind of realize the type of situation that they're in, because they find out, about all these different situationships, entanglements, and things of that nature. I wanted to talk a little bit about how does the narcissist justify cheating under the guise of religion, specifically what we tend to see in our faith. We just want to keep it real. Let's just open up the can of worms. So when cheating's going on, we know that adultery, in a marriage is completely, one of the gravest sins. When that goes on, how does that sometimes get covered and looked over, and faith is used to sort of do that?
I think two ways come up to me immediately. One is blaming the wife for not sexually fulfilling the husband, right? We know in Islam, men, this hadith is mentioned a lot, where the woman is not supposed to refuse her husband, and if she does, she's cursed throughout the night. But there are conditions, right? And she's a human being, and oftentimes in our communities, the woman is working, and doing things that really she should not be doing. And really, if she's in that role that the man typically would play, then a lot of those rights that he thinks that he should have, he loses. But men oftentimes gets mentioned, or you're not fulfilling me enough. Also, if you're bringing two people from two completely different sexual backgrounds, someone who maybe was very sexually promiscuous, sexually active, and maybe in a variety of different ways, and someone who isn't, it's very important when you're courting. Those topics really need to come up. And as in Islam, we're really shy to talk about those things because we feel like, we need to be, that's, and maybe going too below the belt. But no, you're going to be sleeping with this person. So you need to know what they are expecting of you sexually and what's their sexual experience. Even currently, as you're talking to me, are you sexually involved? Some people don't consider that a relationship because they're only using it for a need. So all those things need to be brought up. and really talked about in depth. And what happens is it's not, because people are too shy or embarrassed, or they feel like they're not a good, Muslim, or not religious because they're bringing it up. And also because many times when we're courting, we're not alone, right? Because it's not recommended to court, by yourself. So you're with, maybe with a family member, maybe with a parent, and it's embarrassing to bring these things up. And so when you go in unknowing what the person's sexual expectations are, and then you can't fulfill them, they use that against you and say, well, I had to go seek, something else because you're not fulfilling me. I'm not fulfilled. Or what they often do is go into polygyny. I'm marrying a woman because I need more sex. So you're essentially saying you're using someone for your sexual desire. You have no intention on loving this woman, cultivating her, providing for her. Oftentimes when it's done, is a woman that's independent is picked. Someone who already has a job, who already has a lifestyle. So it's really like a halal boyfriend. She doesn't really need much. And a lot of the brothers in communities, this is like praised. Like he has his needy wife, and then he got his freak, his girlfriend, and so and the sad thing is that as women we have to up the bar. We shouldn't accept, go into a relationship accepting something like that, and vice versa. A man shouldn't be accepted to be used for a woman's sexual needs. Marriage is much deeper than that. But oftentimes, when we're going into marriage, because as Muslims we don't engage in sexual intercourse outside of marriage, that's like the reason to get married. And it starts with young people. As soon as our sons and daughters are interested in the opposite sex, it's like, oh, they need to get married. No, it's actually normal. I want my son to be attracted to girls. I want my daughter to be attracted to boys. Now we can open a conversation. I saw you was looking at Aisha, at the iftar. What's going on? You like her? You think she's cute? Let's talk about it. Let's open up a conversation and let them feel comfortable, so that they don't grow up to be men and women who are now seeking sexual pleasure and they think that's marriage. And that's and that's really the foundation of it, and that's very, very dangerous. And that's what happens oftentimes. And then we have this cycle of people of going around, and then we have multiple marriages, multiple divorces, and a lot of it is, the root of it is desire. Fulfill this desire within you.
Absolutely powerful. Thank you, Coach Sabria. So Janice, Dr. Ray, we talked about cheating, and Dr. Ray said that the narcissist has a, deeply rooted insecurity. And so they constantly, everything for the narcissist is external. So they constantly need external things, external people that consistently and constantly validate their importance, give them a sort of a sense of like purpose, attention, validation, all those sort of things. And so for the narcissist, let's talk about sexual narcissism here. That sometimes it's just about being validated. I can, I can get this person, that I have to constantly feed it, and just getting it from one person or whoever you're in relationship with is just not enough. I wanted to ask you, as it relates to this, as it comes up, how common is it for people to be seeking, to be in marriages and holy unions and still connected to a whole bunch of other relationships?
Oh, it's very common. Very, very common. And just like Sister Sabria said, it's a need, like a conversation that hasn't been had, that needs to be had. Nobody wants to talk about the needs that they want and they desire. So once you are in a covenant and you've moved forward, you're married now, there's no going back from that. Once you cross that line, now that desire of, you're not giving me enough of this, which is before it wasn't a problem, the 3 months, 6 months, year that we courted, that wasn't a topic, that wasn't an issue. But now that we're in a union, now the fulfillment is not being met, because now your trait, your desire for whatever level that I'm not giving you, you're trying to feed it in other places. And sometimes it just needs a conversation. Hey, I would like for us to have this. We're doing this, well, whatever it is that we're doing, I would need a little bit more. Not having that conversation is making the other person, the narcissistic traits come out, and now they're all over the place. Because before, it was just like, okay, I need a desire, I have a desire, I'm not going to speak on that, but it's okay for me to go out and get it in other places because you're not fulfilling that desire that's meant for me.
Yeah, and that's just how they justify it. But
Yeah.
truly, this is all about them. It has nothing to do with someone else. Noble, since you opened up the can of worms on a female narcissist, and one of the brothers said, "Thank you, sisters, for being balanced." What is how is sex used by the female narcissist?
So I think that we're more sexual than we like to let on.
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes we don't like to, as it was just said, we don't like to ask those important questions at first, but we do have a high level of expectation in certain areas. And some brothers are, well, I'm not going to say some brothers, well, brothers in general, I would make this general statement, don't really talk down upon themselves. They're not going to tell you any shortcomings that they have. So, when it comes to us as women, getting into a situation where possibly we're not being fulfilled, it can turn kind of, how can I say? I don't want to say we attack, but at times we can attack. I'm just going to put it out there. I'm sorry. At times we can attack. We can get to a point where we use that as a way to manipulate or control the man and also make him feel a certain way. That does bring his self-esteem down, and it causes him to feel less than. And it's not anything that really he can do unless you talk to him about it. I do believe that any type of sexual relationship requires conversation. And I believe that a lot of times if we, not at the beginning, in depth, too much in depth, but I believe there's maybe a secret ballot type of a checklist or how can you say a pre-marriage inquiry where it can be done in a way to where it's a little private, but it does allow you to ask specific questions. And I would put it on paper because, like you said, we want to be modest and we want to make sure that we still are staying within the guidelines of the Islamic way of meeting someone and understanding who they are. But there are basic sexual questions that we need to ask. And if you can't do it verbally, then write it down. And so that way, when you do get into a relationship, even the men have to ask the women what they expect and be okay with asking her those questions, because that's how you're going to pinpoint if she is coming from a narcissistic place of always wanting to be pleased herself and never knowing how to reciprocate pleasure or reciprocate even that conversation, or if that man has an expectation, his expectations need to be met as well. These are bonding conversations. And like I said, it doesn't have to be verbal because we do want to have the modesty there, but at least have a way of asking the question in general to have an understanding so that you don't end up in a situation to where you're a man that's being used because she doesn't really need you for anything. We have a lot of independent women out here. I know it was said earlier. We have a lot of independent women out here who are providing for themselves and kind of have their life together, and they really just need a husband for companionship, and they lead with that, but then it really turns into, I'm just using him for what I need physically, and I'm really not reciprocating any love or understanding or companionship at the fundamental level. Or even Islam is not even coming into play, because I'm entering this relationship just to get my needs fulfilled.
Yeah.
So you do have to have those conversations from the beginning.
Absolutely, 100%. Coach Sabrina, I want to talk to you about something. When people often come to me, and I know you have clients as well, in regards to narcissism, they'll often go over the story of like all the horrible things that has happened to them. And I always ask a fundamental question: why did you stay? And there's typically two of the same reasons, but one of the reasons that typically comes up is sex, right? And so that tells me that that's a very real tool used to put someone in an addictive cycle. And we talk a little bit about sexual narcissism in the sense of like where you make the sex super over the top, crazy as you're in that love bombing phase. And then you immediately push them to a phase where you withdraw sexually. You really begin to use sex as a manipulative tool. You're no longer interested. You may criticize their body, right? And so I wanted to ask you, Coach, just in reference to this, because this is something that's really important, right? As it relates to being addicted, right? Being so addicted to what we believe is a sexual relationship that we completely bypass the mistreatment and abuse. We see that a lot when girls be like, oh, the sex is good. It's all good. Why is this such a challenge for many women, and how can we get past that? Sorry if I gave you a loaded one.
Yeah. It's interesting because this recently came up in one of my sessions, but I feel that going back to that inner child, that wounded inner child, and sex feeds all of those emotions. It's desire, I want you, you're validated, you're important, you're beautiful. It feeds all of that. And so when a woman or a person thinks about not having that, then where are they going to get it from? Where is that going to be feeded from if I'm not having this person feeding that within me? And I feel like a lot of people stay because they haven't tapped into that, the reason why they need that in the first place. That it's not really about the intimacy, but it's about the attention and the feeling behind it. And that's coming from a wounded place within them. And they have to tap into that and say, this isn't healthy for me, especially when you have children. Children know that you're not happy, right? They know that they're in a toxic environment. And sometimes what can happen is the children start to model this sexual type of behavior if it's not, hidden, because it could be at dinner, it could be at the dinner table, and maybe things are exchanged, words are exchanged. Children pick up on all those things. You're in the kitchen and it could be like, a breast rub or a butt tap or, a comment, and the children are around. And so now you have children who are maybe sexually aware prematurely. And they're picking up on these things and saying things and doing things. And you're like, where you get that from? Why are you like that? Or at school and doing things, in the playground with the children. So it affects not just that person, but it affects the family. And I think, when you're in these types of situations and in your core it's not right, but you're staying for the intimacy, you have to start asking yourself, why do I need that? Why is it that this is the only reason why I'm with this person? And I often will tell my clients to write a list of all the positive and negative traits. And if you can't get through 5, or 6 good things about this person, and I'm not, and outside of, intimacy, but real things, he's a good communicator, he's a good provider, he or she, they listen, we study together, emotionally available. If you can't get through some core things and you're just writing, all the negative traits, then you need to start questioning, why am I here? What am I getting out of this? What is it feeding within me? And how do I get that somewhere else? How can I give it to myself firstly, and then, start doing the work of actually leaving. I believe that before we physically leave, we mentally and emotionally leave.
Yes.
Then the physical aspect is easier. And that's what takes so long, because you have to emotionally detach from this person. And that's the work.
That's the work. Absolutely. SubhanAllah, Layla said, some people measure their worth with sex. For some, they have nothing else to offer. So they deal with abuse because their only connection is the sex. And I will also say, specific to this dynamic, why this is so important, because what's happening during love bombing, what's happening during idolizing is excessive dopamine serotonin rushes, right? You're constantly in this high state. It is like a drug. And the sex is usually, sex induces these good feel hormones anyway. And especially if it's done in a certain heightened way, it can really produce this sort of rush within you. And so typically when you are being devalued and mistreated and that's all gone, you're desperate to feel that dopamine rush at that core level as well. So you're desperate to feel that high that's symbolic of that high you felt during that love bombing phase. And so it becomes another part of addiction. And a lot of people actually have real sex addictions, addicted to masturbation or addicted to pornography post their relationship with a narcissist. So it's very real, and religiously, because sex is sanctioned in religion, right? It's something that has governance and laws and regulations around. It's something that should always be addressed and talked about, because even though people navigate out of it, they're still in the dark dealing with very real harmful addictions in relationship to their sexuality. So I wanted to spend some time on that, but I wanted to kind of culminate this discussion with the power of the village. And I wanted to talk a little bit about something that we ended with Dr. Ray when we talked about like how people who are navigating these type of relationships, they are often not believed. They're often isolated. They're often left alone. Honestly, like in religious spaces, triangulation is huge. This idea of like really being able to use your religious leader, manipulate them into further harming your victim. I wanted to start with you, Janice, first, as it relates to the power of the village, right? With your Christian brothers and sisters. When people are navigating these dark spaces, first of all, is it common for people not to be believed? And number two, what do you think? How should we be sort of moving in a way where we are creating a village around people are hurting in this way?
Trying to, understand the why, I guess. A lot of times we judge, but we don't want to get to the core of the why. Why are you behaving this way? For me, when I deal with my clients, or I've actually been in a marriage where I dealt with all of that. And my main focus was the why. I wanted to understand the backstory of what made you this way. And once I would begin to kind of understand a little bit, it helps me to know how to deal with this person and how to maintain this person and how to teach them how to separate from the narcissistic, from them operating from a narcissistic place, and to getting them to say, okay, you need healing in this area. So just being able to have the patience to identify, what your brother, sister, or significant other is dealing with, if you're dealing with a narcissist, or if you're dealing with someone who has those traits, you have to be able to be calmly and not so, oh, I need. No, what can I do to help? What, try to have those conversations of learning the history from childhood. Like Sister Sabria said, you have to want to know how to help your community.
Right. Absolutely. And that's really important. People don't really understand the power of the story. And at a certain point in your healing journey, the story of the villain you created, the boogeyman, the monster, needs to be understood, because we tend to give them so much power by making them the boogeyman. And then they continue to have all this power over our lives. They control the decisions we make and the type of relationships we get in thereafter and all of that, because we made them the boogeyman, right? But if you understand their story, you're like, wow, Miskeen, poor little thing. They now have no power, right? And they can no longer control your life. So the power of the story, thank you for bringing that up, Janice, is really important. And sometimes we think, why would I want to know, or why do I even care what this person went through? It's because you're giving that person a lot more power and control than than they have, right? So, Noble, I wanted to come to you and talk about the village. What can we do as Muslim women, in particular, to support those who are navigating this?
I definitely believe in the powerful, the journey behind it, understanding, and also just not no judgment, creating a safe space for us to have open dialogue, to understand uh, even why they are susceptible to the narcissistic attacks. Because we have to start to put together a kind of a defense plan, because we know that everyone kind of comes with narcissistic tendencies here and there. And if you were in a narcissistic relationship and you didn't heal from that, you yourself can develop those tendencies in just trying to protect who you are. So you
Exactly.
really have to pay attention to that. And so we just have to open the dialogue and have a safe space to
Yeah.
talk about what happened to us with no judgment, also to talk about how we're healing from it. And if I come to someone and say, hey, I was in a narcissistic relationship and now I have these narcissistic traits because I'm afraid to open up, or I'm ultra defensive, or I'm hypersensitive to what everyone thinks about me, and I'm scared to even go outside because I don't want people to look at me or think of, we have to accept that and meet people where they are and stop judging or criticizing. It's accept them, empathize, not sympathize. We don't need sympathy. We just need understanding and empathy. And then put together plans together to say, hey, whatever you've been through, sis, I have your back. I'm here. If you need to talk, I'm here. If you want to strategize, I'm here to develop an action plan. And podcasts such as these and community outreaches, I think, are important because we are really losing that community connection. We
Yeah,
need to start building it back up from the ground up.
we do. We do. Sabrina, one of the things that tends to happen when we talk about the village and we talk about people that are navigating this is that they're often not believed. Okay. And sometimes for women in particular, they're often made to be the deranged, crazy, emotionally wrecked, women that just, did all this great. They just can't get themselves together. And a lot of women feel destroyed by this and really isolated. And we lose a lot of people, in our faith due to this experience. Um, I wanted you to speak directly to those women. And for those that are finding themselves in this space where they're not believed by their community leaders or whatever the case may have you, what should they do? Where should they go?
First, I would say to those women, tell your story, but tell it with integrity.
Mm,
That is important to tell your story without dehumanizing the other person, because at the end of the day, they need help.
yes.
And this is still your brother or your sister in faith, and so you don't want to destroy them. You just want to bring about awareness. You want to open a conversation as you're doing, on your platform, just talking about it. And I feel like a part of one of the reasons why people aren't heard is not because they're talking, but it's in the manner in which they're talking.
Mm,
Is how you tell your story, right?
okay.
So you want to tell your story with integrity, and you want to tell, and everything doesn't need to be told. Some things are like, I don't need to say those things. When I was writing my book, my daughter said, I don't know why you kept so many things out of the book. You know why? And I said, because some of the things are just between me and Allah. It's not necessary for me to say every detail. What is the intention behind you telling your story? What are you really trying to do? And if you're just trying to get it out there, it's very therapeutic and get
Yeah.
support and let other people hear you. People are going to gravitate towards that intention as opposed to, no, I want this man or woman, I want this person to suffer like I suffer. I want them to feel bad about themselves. People tend to run away from that. We're, especially in the way everything is happening in the world now, and people are very deeply connected to the human experience. And when
Mm.
you just tell your human experience, your human journey, that's so much more powerful than trying to destroy someone in the process. So
Ooh.
I say to anyone, that's healing, that I see you, we see you, we're here, we support you, but make sure you do it with integrity and check your intention behind why you're telling your story. It is important to have the conversation. It's important for us to bring these topics up, for people to be aware of it. But I don't agree with destroying someone in the process.
Absolutely. SubhanAllah. SubhanAllah. That's really powerful advice. I hope people listen to it, Sabria. I hope people listen to it, because it's really important to understand that is a big reason why many people are not heard, because the objective and the intent is to like kind of essentially do what you're a victim, like do what the abuser has done to you, which is get a cold collective group of people against you. That's not your aim if you're pure-hearted, right? If you're pure-hearted, you have no invested interest in that. And you're right, the story. And I always say, like, if you want any type of healing process and narcissistic abuse should involve your story, constantly looking at your story. Day 1 of your healing journey, what's your story? Day 15, what's your story? Day 30, what's your story? You should constantly be improving your story. I really appreciate this dialogue. Thank you guys so much. It was really, really insightful. It was very helpful. There's so many people navigating this. There's so many people stuck. Often people just don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Don't know what to do. Right? I want you to give one in a very short way, like not extended, a simple sentence if you can, of give me one thing they should do. Just one final tip from each of you. What should they do if they find themselves in that deep, dark, stuck place and they don't have the wherewithal to know how to move with their next move? Janice, last tip.
Revise, rebuild, put yourself back on track to attract a a way of healing. Healing is everything. Once you come into a place where you want to heal, I think that is the most powerful thing that you can do. And that's the most powerful advice that I could give is healing. Healing is everything. It will break cycles for you, your children, the generations to come. So
powerful.
Realign.
I like to revise. I like that one. Revise. Okay. Noble, final tip, final word.
I would say introspect and remember who you are remember who you are so that you can introspect enough to tell your story without the attack, because you do need to vent and you do need to seek help outside of yourself. If you're in that dark space, you can't always trust what you tell yourself sometimes. So don't be afraid to rely on others, even though sometimes you're in that dark space and it feels like you're all alone. You're not alone. We're here. I know every single one of us here on this chat here, we're here. We have sisters all over their hearts are big and we're living the same lives. So just remember who you are, take a deep breath and reach out, because a lot of us are right there with you.
MashaAllah. Coach Sabria, final word.
Be still and give yourself grace.
Thank you so much. Beautiful. And my final word is join Trauma Bonded No More. I got to my plug. Trauma Bonded No More, our cohort, our 3-week intensive starts this Sunday. It is 3 Sundays in a row. And I know I have some of my Trauma Bonded No More. I saw you guys, cohort graduates of cohort 1 here in the room with us in the audience. But join this if you are really stuck in your loss and you don't know where to go. And everything that they said here is incorporated into this cohort. I thank you. I am humbled by each and every one of you. I want to thank you guys so much. We spoke as women with the same hearts, women connected to the same creator. And I deeply thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Janice, for showing up. May God bless you. May he increase you. May he continue to fortify you in all of your work.
Likewise.
Amen.
Thank you. And Sister Noble, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for bringing balance. Thank you for bringing light and introspection. I deeply, deeply appreciate you. And Coach Sabria, thank you so much for being my sister on this journey with me, man. It's very few people that understand that this level of work, and you're one of them. And I deeply appreciate everything you do and the light that you are to this community. So thank you for showing up here tonight.
Thank you. I feel the same about you.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you, audience members. We love you guys. I appreciate you guys for having this healthy discussion. I think you heard all of the ladies. What they said is like, you got to kind of have these dialogues. Many times this has been going on and prevalent because we just simply didn't talk about it. We were just more leaned towards shame. But you do have safe spaces to go. You do have open spaces, and you always model, I'm talking to the audience, of how to have such a productive conversation. And I just really appreciate the Dope Muslim Woman podcast family. I love you guys radically. You know that. Thank you so much. Shout out to my amazing husband in the background, just kind of like listening to everything and texting me every 5 seconds, which is why sometimes you see me smiling and laughing at it. But shout out to him. But thank you guys. I appreciate it. Light and love to each and every one of you guys. We will be back soon with another dope podcast. Trauma Bonding no more this Sunday. Register, okay? All right. Talk to you soon. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.